Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and programmers. We're going to do CodeAcademy Lesson 10, Part 8. We're going to learn a for each loop. All right, make sure you write this down at the top of your notes and put your name at the top of your notes. And then I want you to ask an intelligent question before you try to get these things signed off. Speaking of intelligent question, make sure you come over here. It should be CodeAcademy Lesson 10, Part 8 for each loop. So read everything over here and write down your intelligent question. Okay, so read all this. Okay, I'm assuming you have now followed my very clear instructions and you've read all that. Now answer these questions. When are for each loops handy? What is the difference between a for each and a regular for loop? Answer those questions. If you don't know the answers, obviously ask me in class and I will tell you. All right, let's go to the next thing. All right, so here's what I want you guys to do. I want you to open your JDoodle 10.7 and then save it as 10.8 and then simplify the loop to make the main method look like this. So you can, if you have to, you can just copy and paste this text in if you need to. But what I want you to do is there's this right here, there's this for loop. I want you to switch it to a for each loop, okay? And then get me to sign it off. So let's take a look at what that's going to look like here. I'll help you do it. So try to do it on your own. If you can't do it on your own, then you can watch the rest of this video. All right, so what we're going to do is we have this thing here. Okay, let me blow this up. Make it bigger so you can see it. All right, so basically we're using a for loop here to run through our array list, and we're going to print out each element in the array. And so if we hit execute, it prints out each element in the array. All right, so what I want you to do is get your code to look like this, right? And then we're going to switch this for loop to a for each loop, okay? So basically what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to get rid of the increment. We don't need that. And we're going to we don't use an int I anymore because it doesn't say like, oh, let's do 0, 1, 2, 3. It just goes through each element in the array one by one. So we don't have to count anymore. So we're going to get rid of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to change it into a variable that's going to temporarily hold each one. So basically we're going to have a variable that's going to hold this on first iteration through, then it's going to hold this, then it's going to hold this, then it's going to hold this. Right? So we're making a local variable that's going to hold it. So now what kind of variable are we going to need? Well, these are letters, these are words, so we're going to need string. Okay, and then we just need to make up a name. You can make up whatever name you want. I don't know. Let's follow the advice. Let's follow the example of CodeAcademy. What they said. Inventory item. Okay, so we can put whatever we want. So I'm going to say string hobby. Not there. What did it just do? String hobby item. That makes sense. All right. So now, when we're using a for each loop, we don't use a colon or semicolon. We use a colon. So that's important. All right. And then the next thing we tell it is which array are we gonna loop through. Well, we're gonna access each index item in my hobbies. So we're gonna just click right here, and we're gonna backspace that, and we don't need any of this stuff. We just simply say my hobbies, and then I deleted something I need to put my focus back. All right. So we have our loop started for. And then it's basically going to go through. So basically when we use this code, it's just going to say, oh, I'm looping through my hobbies. I'm going to go through each one. And then it knows that I'm going to stick each element into this temporary variable. So it looks at the first one, which is 0. And, oh, we're going to stick backpacking into hobby item. And then it gets to here. It jumps back here. Oh, we're going to put camping into hobby item. So down here, we don't even have an I anymore, so if I were to hit execute, it's going to say some error message like, hey, I don't even know what this symbol variable is. What's I? Cannot find the symbol. It doesn't know what I is, right? So because we deleted that variable. Okay, so what are we going to print out? We're going to print out a hobby item because every time it goes through the loop, hobby item is now storing this thing. So I'm going to put in something like that. Okay, so it's a little bit simpler, real short, so it's kind of elegant in that way. All right, and now it works, and so that's it. Okay, so let's jump back to our spiel and see what's next. Make sure you get that signed off. Now complete part 8 and move on to part 9. So let's take a look at what it looks like part 8 in CodeAcademy. Here's what I'm talking about. All right, so we're going to go to CodeAcademy here, and let's see what they're saying here. All right, hey, let's use a for each loop to find the priciest item in expenses. Okay, so if you take a look right here, they have an array list, and they put all the expenses this guy had. So he had a $74, a $63, a $10, and $81 expense, right? And so we can just look at that, and we can tell that 81 is the biggest one. But if this thing was super huge and we were doing it for like 100,000 different customers, we wouldn't want a person to have to go and look through this and figure it out. We want the computer program to do it really fast. All right. So what they want us to do is they want us to do a for loop. So we're going to start off with for, and we'll do a parentheses, parentheses, and then let's go ahead and do our opening and closing curly brackets. So we've got it set up. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put in a variable that's going to hold each of these. Well, what kind of stuff is each of these? Well, these are doubles. These are all doubles, right? So we're going to have to say double. And what's going to be a good name that's going to hold these things? Well, the array is called expenses. Each of these is called expense. So let's call it double expense. So we can make up any name we wanted right there. There's no, although CodeAcademy being stingy might want one particular thing, but if we're coding on our own, we could name that anything we want. Not a semicolon. Not a semicolon. Let me make this bigger so you can see it. Okay. All right, so double expense, and then we need to put the name of the array that we're going through. So the name of this array that we're looping through is expenses. Now this one actually has to be exactly the same, so we can't make this one up. Okay, so we're looping through this. We're looping through expenses. And so the first iteration through the loop, expense is going to be equal 74, then 63, then 10, then 81. All right, so for now, leave the body of the loop empty. So if we run that, it should be happy. Okay, and so because there's nothing in the body of the loop when it gets down here to print out the most expensive, so we set most expensive equal to 0 and never did anything else with it, so that's why it's still 0. But in the next little section here, we'll do it. All right, inside the for each loop, check if expense is greater than the most expensive. Okay, so we're going to click here, hit enter, and we're going to do an if. And we're going to do our parentheses, parentheses, and then we're going to do our opening and closing curly braces. So we've set up an if statement here. So we want to check to see if expense is greater than most expense. So it's basically what's going to happen. It's going to go through, it's going to grab 74, it's going to stash it into expense, and then we'll say, hey, is expense 74 greater than most expensive, which it's going to be because it's 0. So we're going to say if expense, inside our thing here, if expense is greater than most expensive, well then, so the first iteration through, it's like, oh, well, yeah, 74 is greater than 0, so this so far is our most expensive, right? So then in our code here, we're going to say then most expensive now equals expense, semicolon, okay? And then let's just go through what's going to happen the next iteration through. So right now, most expensive is 74. Okay, it's going to grab 63, put it into expense, and say, hey, is 63 greater than 64? No. So it's going to be, then it's going to say, is 10 greater than 74? No. Is 81 greater than 74? Yes. So now the most expensive equals 81. And so when we get down to here, when we want to print out most expensive, it should print out 81. Let's see, let's run it and see if it worked. And it did it. So you were able to go through the entire loop. Pardon me, you're able to go through the entire array list, name expenses, and basically look through each of these items and do some stuff with it. All right, so that's it for this one. Let me go ahead and go on to the next one.